Montana Territory, 1883. The wind whispered secrets across the open plains as Dillon Fletcher pulled his hat low against the setting sun, dust from the long trail home coating his worn boots. At 24, he already had the practiced seat of a seasoned rider, but his clean-shaven face and the light in his hazel eyes betrayed his youth. His chestnut hair curled slightly where it escaped his hat, still untouched by time's weathering. The telegram that had summoned him back to Clearwater Valley after 3 years away weighed heavy in his pocket. Uncle Thomas passed. Ranch yours. Come home. Home. The word felt strange to him now. After his parents' deaths when he was 17, Uncle Thomas had taken him in, teaching him everything about cattle and horses before Dillon had struck out on his own. Now, with spring settling over the Montana Territory, he found himself returning not as a hired hand, but as the owner of the Silver Creek Ranch. As the ridge broke to reveal the valley below, Dillon reined his horse to a stop. The ranch looked smaller than he remembered, the main house with its weather-beaten porch, the barn leaning slightly eastward, and the scattered outbuildings that comprised the place he'd once called home. What caught his eye, though, was the figure moving across the yard, a woman with honey-gold hair gathered loosely at her nape, her blue calico dress swaying as she carried a basket toward the house. Dillon frowned. Uncle Thomas had never mentioned a woman. "Whoa, champion," he murmured to his bay gelding, patting the horse's neck as they began their descent toward the ranch. The woman spotted him when he was halfway down, shielding her eyes against the late afternoon sun. She set down her basket and waited, hands folded at her waist. As Dillon drew closer, he could see she was young, perhaps 20, with delicate features and eyes the color of spring violets. Her simple dress was neat but practical, a thin shawl draped over her shoulders against the spring chill. "You must be Thomas's nephew," she called when he was within earshot, her voice carrying a soft, unfamiliar accent. "He said you might come." Dillon dismounted, removing his hat as he approached her. "I'm Dillon Fletcher. And you are?" "Naomi Mills. I was your uncle's nurse in his final months." She offered a small, sad smile. "He spoke of you often. A nurse." That explained her presence, though not why she remained after his uncle's passing. "I appreciate your care for him. I didn't know he was ill for so long. His telegram just said to come quickly, but I was working a cattle drive in Wyoming. By the time I got the news and could get away." He understood. Naomi picked up her basket again. "He left letters for you. And the house is ready, if you'd like to come in." Dillon hesitated, looking around the ranch that was now his. "I should see to my horse first." "Of course. The barn is still where it always was." A hint of amusement crossed her face. "I'll have coffee waiting." As Dillon led Champion toward the barn, questions multiplied in his mind. How long had his uncle been sick? What kind of nurse stays on after her patient has passed? And most importantly, what awaited him in those letters? The barn was exactly as he remembered, though tidier. Fresh hay filled the stalls, tack was organized on pegs, and the tools hung in orderly rows. Someone had been taking good care of the place. After settling Champion with water and feed, Dillon took a moment to collect himself before heading to the main house. The interior of the ranch house carried the same sense of familiar strangeness. The furniture was arranged differently, new curtains hung at the windows, and the scent of lemon polish and baking bread had replaced the tobacco and leather he associated with his uncle's home. It was cleaner, brighter somehow. Naomi emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. "Coffee's hot. There's bread too, if you're hungry." "Thank you." Dillon accepted the offered cup, noting how naturally she moved through his uncle's home. "How long were you caring for my uncle?" "Almost 8 months." She sat across from him at the kitchen table. "It started as just helping with cooking and cleaning when his arthritis got bad, then more as his heart weakened. Your uncle was stubborn, refused to leave his ranch even when the doctor in town suggested it." Dillon nodded, recognizing that trait in Thomas Fletcher. "That sounds like him. The letters are in his study. He organized them himself, said you'd understand their importance when the time was right." Naomi rose, gesturing toward the hallway. "I've been staying in the small bedroom, but I can gather my things, no need to rush." Dillon interrupted, surprising himself. "I mean, I'd appreciate if you could stay on, at least for a few days. Help me understand what happened here." Relief softened her features. "I'd be glad to. Your uncle was a good man. He deserves to have his wishes respected." Later that evening, After a simple but satisfying meal, Dillon found himself standing in the doorway of his uncle's study. The room was unchanged, books lining the shelves, the old desk positioned to catch the morning light, the leather chair worn smooth from years of use. A wooden box sat prominently in the center of the desk. With careful hands, Dillon opened it. Inside were bundles of letters tied with faded ribbons, each bundle marked with a year spanning from 1845 to 1882. The top envelope, addressed simply to Dillon, was written in his uncle's shaky hand. "Dillon, if you're reading this, I've gone to join your Aunt Margaret. There's much I never told you, boy. Some because you were too young, some because I was too proud. The ranch is yours now, along with its secrets. These letters tell a story I kept hidden for reasons that seemed important once. Read them in order. They'll explain why the east pasture is never to be plowed, why the old cottonwood by the creek is sacred ground, and perhaps most importantly, why the Fletcher men have always been fools for love but blessed by it all the same. Take care of what matters. You'll know what that is when you finish reading. Underscore your uncle." Thomas underscore Dillon's fingers trembled slightly as he set the letter aside and reached for the first bundle, marked 1845. As he untied the ribbon, Naomi appeared in the doorway. "I made up your old room," she said softly, "and there's hot water if you want to wash up." He looked up, suddenly aware of how tired he was. "Thank you. I think I'll start on these in the morning." She nodded, lingering for a moment. "Your uncle read those letters every anniversary of your aunt's death. I never knew what they contained, but they always left him both sad and strangely peaceful." "My aunt died before I was born," Dillon said. Uncle Thomas rarely spoke of her. "Perhaps the letters will tell you why." Naomi stepped back into the hallway. "Good night, Mr. Fletcher." "Dillon," he corrected. "Just Dillon." A small smile touched her lips. "Good night, Dillon." Sleep came fitfully that night, his dreams filled with unfamiliar voices and half-remembered stories from his childhood. When morning light filtered through the curtains, Dillon rose early, drawn to the box of letters that waited in the study. The first bundle began with a letter dated April 12, 1845, written in a flowing feminine script. "My dearest Thomas, I write this on the morning after you asked for my hand, while my heart still soars with happiness. Father forbids our union and plans to send me east on tomorrow's stage. He says a cattle rancher with nothing but dreams cannot provide for his daughter. He does not understand that love sustains more truly than gold. I will defy him. Meet me at our cottonwood at midnight. Bring your fastest horse. We shall make our own fortune together, far from those who would separate us. Underscore forever yours." Margaret underscore Dillon sat back, stunned. He had always assumed his aunt and uncle had married with family blessings. The next letter was dated a week later, written in his uncle's bold hand. "My beloved wife, though we have been married only 5 days, I write this as you sleep beside me in our wagon. The stars above our camp tonight remind me of the light in your eyes when the preacher pronounced us husband and wife. Your father's men nearly caught us at the river crossing, but we are safely into the Montana territory now. The land here is rich and wild. I have never been more certain that our future lies in this valley I told you about. By this time next year, we will have built our home and started our family. Every dream I have includes you. Underscore with all my heart." Thomas underscore as the morning progressed into afternoon, Dillon lost himself in the story unfolding through the letters, his uncle and aunt's journey to Montana, the struggle of their first years establishing the ranch, their deep and abiding love through hardship and joy. He barely noticed when Naomi brought him coffee and sandwiches, though he thanked her absently. The letters from 1850 grew increasingly concerning. Margaret wrote of a fever that had swept through nearby settlements. Thomas wrote of his fear when she fell ill, then his relief at her recovery. But something had changed. References to their hopes for children became more strained, more desperate with each passing year. A letter from 1855 made Dillon's throat tighten. "My Thomas, the doctor has confirmed what we feared. The fever took more from me than we knew. There will be no children of our blood. I write this as you ride the fence lines, unaware that our dream of a family has died today. How can I tell you? How can I rob you of sons to inherit this land you love so much? Perhaps I should release you to find another, a whole woman who can give you the family you deserve. Underscore I cannot bear to see disappointment in your eyes." Margaret underscore the next letter was stained with what might have been tears. "Margaret, My only love. Never again suggest I would want any life but the one with you. If God grants us no children, then we shall be enough for each other. This land, this home we've built, it is ours together. The legacy we leave need not be carried in our blood. I have planted a sapling by our creek today, a cottonwood like the one where we pledged ourselves to each other. It will grow as our love has grown, with deep roots and branches reaching for the sky. When we are gone, it will remain, testament to what we built together. Underscore you are not diminished in my eyes. You are everything. Thomas underscore Dillon wiped his own eyes and glanced out the window. The cottonwood by the creek, massive now, stood silhouetted against the afternoon sky. He had climbed that tree as a boy, never knowing its significance. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Naomi stood in the doorway, concern evident in her expression. "You've been in here all day," she said. "Are you all right?" Dillon gestured to the letters spread across the desk. "I'm learning about my family. Things I never knew." He hesitated, then asked, "Did my uncle tell you why the east pasture was never to be plowed?" Surprise flickered across her face. "Only that it was sacred to him and your aunt. He made me promise before he died that I would make sure you knew." She stepped closer. "Have you found the answer?" "Not yet, but I think I'm beginning to understand my uncle better." He gathered the letters carefully, returning them to their ribboned bundles. "What was he like at the end?" Naomi's expression softened. "Peaceful. Ready. His only regret seemed to be that he wouldn't see you again. That's why he wrote so many letters in those final weeks. He was determined to leave you something more valuable than just land." The thought of his uncle, alone but for a hired nurse, writing letters with failing strength made Dillon's chest ache with guilt. "I should have been here. He never blamed you for that." Naomi rested a hand briefly on his shoulder. "He was proud of the man you've become." The simple touch, meant as comfort, sent an unexpected warmth through Dillon. He cleared his throat. "Thank you for staying with him. I should start dinner." She withdrew her hand, a faint color touching her cheeks. "Unless you'd prefer to continue reading?" Dillon shook his head. "I could use a break. And maybe you could tell me more about these last months." Over a simple dinner of stew and biscuits, Naomi shared stories of Thomas Fletcher's final season. His determination to see one last spring, his careful instructions about the cattle and horses, his insistence on writing down everything Dillon would need to know. "He talked about you constantly," she said, refilling Dillon's coffee cup. "How you had his brother's eyes, but your mother's gentle heart. How you took to ranching like you were born to it." "He taught me everything I know," Dillon admitted. "I left because I thought I needed to make my own way, prove myself." "And did you? Prove yourself?" The question, asked without judgment, made him pause. "I'm not sure. I worked hard, saved money. But something was missing. Perhaps you were looking for something you already had." Naomi rose to clear their plates. "Your uncle said the Fletcher men often had to wander before they could truly come home." Later that night, Dillon returned to the letters, moving through the decades of his aunt and uncle's life together. He learned of drought years and prosperous ones, of their decision to adopt a boy from the orphan train in 1862, his father, James, and their devastation when he and his wife died in a river-crossing accident, leaving behind their only child, Dillon. As midnight approached, he reached the most recent letters, written in his uncle's increasingly shaky hand. The final letter, dated just 2 weeks before his death, was addressed to Naomi. "Miss Mills, I write this while you sleep, exhausted from caring for an old man who has kept you too long from your own life. Your kindness these months has been a blessing I did not deserve, but desperately needed. I have watched you read to me, tend my home, and bring beauty back to places that grew dark after Margaret left me. I have seen how you look at the land, with the same love Margaret and I felt. And I have noticed how you ask about my nephew, though you try to hide your interest. When Dillon comes home, and he will come home, give him time to read our story. Then give him time to see what I have seen, that sometimes life offers second chances in unexpected ways. The east pasture holds Margaret's resting place, where I will soon join her. But the ranch itself holds a future that needs young hearts to sustain it. Underscore with gratitude and hope." Thomas Fletcher understood. Dillon sat motionless, the letter trembling slightly in his hands. His uncle, even in his final days, had been watching, planning, hoping. But for what exactly? He reread the lines about Naomi's interest in him, feeling a strange flutter in his chest. Morning found him at his aunt's grave in the east pasture, a simple stone marker beneath the spreading branches of a second, smaller cottonwood tree. The rising sun cast long shadows across the grassy expanse as he knelt to clear away the winter debris from the stone. "I didn't know," he whispered, "about any of it." He wanted to be buried beside her. Dillon turned to find Naomi standing several yards away, a small bunch of wildflowers in her hands. She approached slowly, as if uncertain of her welcome, and placed the flowers on the freshly turned earth beside Margaret's grave. The last thing he asked was to be carried here, to see the sunrise over the mountains with her one more time. She knelt beside Dillon. He died watching that sunrise, with a smile on his face. "You read his letter," Dillon said, not a question. She nodded, not meeting his eyes. "He insisted I read it before sealing it away for you. Said it was important I understood my part in his plan." "His plan?" "To bring you home. To make sure the ranch continued." She hesitated. "He worried you might sell it, not knowing its true value." Dillon looked across the pasture land to the distant mountains. "I wouldn't sell it, but I'm not sure I can run it alone either." "You wouldn't have to be alone." The words seemed to surprise her as much as him. She continued quickly, "There are good men in town who would work for fair wages. Your uncle kept a list of names. Is your name on that list?" The question emerged before he could consider it. Color touched her cheeks. "I was only hired as a nurse." "But you've been running this place since he became bedridden, haven't you?" "The barn is too well organized, the house too well maintained for it to be otherwise." "I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania," she admitted. "When my parents died, I trained as a nurse and came west. Your uncle needed help beyond medical care, so I did what needed doing." Dillon studied her face, the determination in her violet eyes, the strength in her delicate features. "Why did you stay after he died? You could have returned to town, found another position." "He asked me to wait for you. To make sure you understood about the east pasture, about the letters." She paused, "And I had nowhere pressing to be." Something in her tone suggested there was more to the story. "Naomi, why did my uncle hire you specifically? There must be other nurses in town." She looked away, toward the distant mountains. "Perhaps you should continue reading the letters. The ones from 1862. The cryptic response only deepened his curiosity, but Dillon recognized the conversation was closed for now. Together, they walked back to the ranch house in companionable silence. The letters from 1862 revealed the story of how Thomas and Margaret had adopted his father, a 10-year-old orphan from Chicago named James who had been sent west on the orphan train. Thomas wrote of their instant connection to the serious boy with intelligent eyes, how Margaret had knelt before him at the train platform and asked if he might consider becoming their son. But it was a letter from 1882, just a year before, that made Dillon's breath catch. "My dear Thomas, I write with news that may bring both pain and healing. The girl who tends bar at the Silverado Hotel is the spitting image of our James at that age. Upon careful inquiry, I learned her name is Naomi Mills, orphaned last year when influenza took her parents. She came west seeking a fresh start, carrying only a small locket with a faded photograph inside. When I asked about the photograph, she showed me without hesitation a picture of a handsome young couple, the man bearing an uncanny resemblance to our James. Her father's name was Edward Mills. Thomas, I believe she is James's niece, which would make her Dillon's cousin. You recall James mentioned a younger brother who remained in Chicago? I am convinced this is his daughter. She does not know of the connection, and I hesitated to approach her directly. Perhaps you might find a way to bring her to the ranch, to determine if my suspicions are correct. Underscore your old friend. Sheriff Harold Grant. Underscore Dillon's hands shook as he set down the letter. The next in the stack was from his uncle to the sheriff, thanking him and outlining a plan to offer Naomi a position when the need arose. The following letters documented Thomas's declining health and his decision to send for Naomi as his nurse. A cousin, family he never knew existed. He found her in the garden behind the house, kneeling among early spring vegetables. She looked up as his shadow fell across her, and something in his expression must have revealed his discovery. You know, she said simply. Why didn't you tell me? Dillon asked, helping her to her feet. Your uncle asked me not to, not until you'd read the letters. She brushed soil from her skirt. He wanted you to understand everything first, about the ranch, about your family history. But you're my family too. My father's brother was your father. Naomi nodded. I only learned the connection myself a few months ago. Your uncle confirmed it when he found my locket. She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small silver oval, opening it to reveal the faded photograph inside. My father always told me his brother had gone west and found a good life. I never knew his name was James Fletcher or that I had a cousin. Dillon studied the photograph, recognizing the resemblance to the father he barely remembered. Uncle Thomas must have been overjoyed to find you. He cried, she admitted softly. Said it was like having a piece of your father back, especially in his eyes. That's when he changed his will, making sure the ranch would pass to you, but including provisions for me as well. Provisions? A small cabin on the north corner of the property, and a stipend to establish myself elsewhere if I chose not to stay. She met his gaze steadily. He wanted to ensure I had options, regardless of what you decided to do with the ranch. The implication was clear. His uncle had tried to protect her, even in death. You're not just an employee, Naomi. You're family. This ranch is your heritage, too. It's your ranch, she corrected. I have no claim on it beyond what your uncle generously provided. Then maybe we need to reconsider the arrangement. Dillon ran a hand through his hair, thoughts racing ahead. A partnership, perhaps. You clearly know this place, care for it, and I could use help running it. Surprise flickered across her face. A business partnership? For now. The words emerged before he fully formed the thought. Unless. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Unless something more develops. Dillon felt his face warm. My uncle seemed to think it might. A slow smile spread across Naomi's face, transforming it with a radiance that made his heart stutter. Your uncle was a very perceptive man. He was indeed. Dillon offered his hand. Partners, then? At least to start. She placed her hand in his, her grip firm despite her delicate fingers. Partners. Spring melted into summer as Dillon and Naomi settled into a rhythm at Silver Creek Ranch. They hired 2 local men as hands, rebuilt fences, and culled the herd for market. In the evenings, they continued reading through Thomas and Margaret's letters, piecing together the full history of the ranch and the family that had built it. As they worked side by side, their partnership deepened into friendship, and friendship blossomed into something more. Dillon found himself watching Naomi as she moved through the house that had become truly a home again, her honey-gold hair catching the lamplight, her laugh brightening rooms that had been silent too long. On a warm August evening, they sat on the porch after dinner, watching fireflies rise from the grass. Dillon had been contemplating a question for weeks, turning it over in his mind until he was certain. Naomi, he began, his voice oddly nervous. These past months, working with you, getting to know you, it's been the happiest time of my life. She turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the last light of sunset. For me as well. I think my uncle knew what he was doing, bringing us together like this. He reached for her hand. We started as strangers, discovered we were family, became partners and friends. But I find myself wanting more than partnership. Her fingers tightened around his. What are you saying, Dillon? I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you. Not as a cousin or a business partner, but as a man loves a woman he wants to build a life with. Naomi's free hand rose to her throat, where she wore the locket containing her father's picture. We share family connections, but we're not blood relations, she said carefully. Still, some might think it improper. The only opinion that matters to me is yours. Dillon lifted her hand to his lips. Do you think it improper, what I feel for you? No, she whispered. Because I feel the same way. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a beginning rather than a culmination. When they drew apart, Dillon rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, Naomi. Help me continue what Thomas and Margaret started here. Her answer was another kiss, deeper and sure. Their wedding took place in October, with the cottonwood trees blazing gold against the blue Montana sky. They exchanged vows beside Margaret's grave in the east pasture, with the sheriff who had first recognized Naomi officiating and half the town in attendance. Thomas's old friends shared stories of the ranch's early days, weaving together threads of past and present. That evening, as twilight settled over Silver Creek Ranch, Dillon and Naomi stood on the porch of the home that was now truly theirs together. I have something for you, Dillon said, pulling a small package from his pocket. I found it in Uncle Thomas's desk. He left instructions that I should give it to you on our wedding day, if there ever was one. Naomi unwrapped the package with careful fingers to reveal a small leather journal. Opening it, she gasped softly at the first page. For Naomi and Dillon, in your hands is the beginning of your own story. Margaret and I wrote our love in letters. Perhaps you will write yours in these pages. The land endures, and so does love, when tended with care. Remember that the Fletcher legacy is not in blood alone, but in the hearts that cherish what we've built. May your children's children read our letters someday, and know they come from love that persevered. Underscore with blessings. Thomas underscore beneath his signature was a pressed flower, a wild violet, preserved between the pages. He knew, Naomi whispered. Somehow, he knew we would find each other. More than that, Dillon said, turning to the next page where a folded paper had been tucked. He planned it. The paper was a deed, the official transfer of Silver Creek Ranch to both their names, dated the day before Thomas died, with a notation that it should only be delivered upon their marriage. He made us equal partners from the beginning, Naomi said, wonder in her voice. He just waited for us to realize it ourselves. Dillon wrapped his arms around his wife, breathing in the scent of her hair as the first stars appeared overhead. Tomorrow, we'll write our first entry in the journal. Tonight, I just want to hold you and think about how many strings my uncle pulled from heaven to bring us together. Naomi turned in his arms, her face tilted up to his. Sometimes the greatest treasures are found in unexpected inheritances. And sometimes, Dillon agreed, lowering his lips to hers, the most mysterious legacy is the love we never saw coming. As night settled fully over Silver Creek Ranch, lights glowed from the windows of the home where Thomas and Margaret had begun their story, where Dillon had found not only his inheritance but his heart's companion, and where a new chapter was just beginning, written in the language of love that had sustained the land through generations. In years to come, they would add their own letters to the collection, documenting their triumphs and challenges, the birth of their children, and the growth of the ranch. They would plant new cottonwoods to mark important milestones, and they would tell the story of how a young cowboy had inherited a mysterious ranch and found, among faded papers and family secrets, the greatest treasure of all, a love that had been waiting for him to come home.